Bob Chesney will have to balance his own path and modeling after Curt Cignetti in Indiana.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson Yoxcyber. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever it's your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, every dayers. What we're talking about today, UCLA women's basketball prepares for Penn State. We got UCLA seeing some former coaches get hired elsewhere. We'll discuss what that means, if anything, in segment 2. But we'll start with this. Bob Chesney, the hope for all UCLA fans, including myself, is that he can have a turnaround similar to that of Curt Cignetti of Indiana. Here's the thing. To turn around UCLA, it's not going to be as dramatic. Why? And why you should go to the stands? Well, I'm going to tell you first. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, most of us hope that Bob Chesney's first portal option would be the top-tier talents from James Madison, like a Wayne Knight, more notably a Sahir West, freshman of the year in the Sun Belt, freshman All-American on the D-line. UCLA needs a lot of talent on the O-line, D-line. But then you could point to, oh, that's the same James Madison team that put up some points, had some decent moments against Oregon, but the score truly didn't reflect a team that, if you brought the entire roster, would be one that would be able to compete with one of the top teams in the Big Ten year after year now with Dan Lanning and Oregon. So I'm like, okay, what's Bob Chesney got to do? And seeing what Curt Cignetti was able to do at Indiana, if it's truly all about good coaching, then what are those types of players he could do to mimic what Indiana did? Well, what Chesney, if you're all going to look at what Cignetti brought, Cignetti took 18 Sun Belt players to his 2024 Indiana team via the transfer portal, 13 of which were from James Madison. All right, 13. Now, a lot of those guys were talented guys. You look at the running back, you look at the DBs, but some of the big name players, you're like, wait a minute, Aiden Fisher, one of his best linebackers, is a guy that translated very well going from JMU to Indiana, making big plays is one of the big reasons, when healthy, that Indiana's defense can be just as legit, and they have depth at the position. But something I noticed for a UCLA team that needs to develop the O-line, in addition to the D-line, there was only 3 offensive linemen that Indiana brought. They brought Nick Kidwell, they brought Tyler Stevens, and another guy who is slipping my mind, but they brought 3 separate guys, a lot of skill guys, some DBs, tight ends, even tapping into the Louisiana Monroes of the world, the Troys of the world, Old Dominion, all teams who are pretty decent this year in the Sun Belt compared to 2 years ago to now. Talent's still pretty comparable between what James Madison was facing 2 years ago to now. Chesney's portal options don't and are not just limited to James Madison in terms of his connections in that conference. He can go and find Old Dominion's top players. Well, right now, one of those guys would be a Colton Joseph, and the Bruins seem to be okay at quarterback now that Nico has officially re-signed to be a Bruin in 2026. Can UCLA go get some top O-linemen? Yes, there are quite a few O-linemen that could move along and be top-tier options for UCLA here in the 2026 season. But you're like, okay, this is what has somewhat hit the portal for James Madison. You got Riley Rebel, you have Sahir West, DJ Barksdale would be a guy I think UCLA would want. They probably want Justin Eaglin. Some of those DB types that could come together, maybe with a Michael McMullen as well, that the Bruins could truly rebuild their defense via JMU, and then they can go look elsewhere for that O-lineman. All right? Because Indiana, they took some 2-star, no-star guys in their high school class, and that's what Curt Cignetti was able to coach up and turn them into a playoff team, and then rebuild, refill, restock, and now they're the number 1 team in the country that's playing in UCLA's home stadium on New Year's Day for their playoff game, the Rose Bowl, as the number 1 team in the country. And the difference between UCLA and the last two Rose Bowl teams from the Big Ten, number one teams in the country, or teams that faced them, they had legitimate offensive lines. They could run the football, give their quarterback time to throw. Obviously, it helps when you're like Indiana and you have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Well, UCLA can be in on that, but it's building from the O-line, and the Bruins can still piece together a couple of JMU guys on the O-line, but I do think Chesney's going to start working outside the box. Going to look more for West Coast connections. UCLA, reported by Matt Zenitz of CBS Sports, is hiring Vic Suoto of formerly the Cal defensive coordinator, co-defensive coordinator, who also worked at USC, but went to Cal, but now is coming to UCLA, and you can see Chesney's bringing his offensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator, has retained A.J. Stewart, Gabe Lynn, two coaches from the previous staff, bringing one of his personnel staffers in Nathan Applebaum. But you put that together, now you got what Chesney was trying to say during his press conference. He wants guys with West Coast ties. And Soto comes in working at multiple power conference schools, the SCs, the Cals of the world, has that connection for UCLA and the West Coast. So I wonder how many different coaches Chesney's going to go from James Madison, maybe not too much, to guys specifically with West Coast recruiting ties that can build the roster this year and for the 2027s, the 2028s, where UCLA's got to start building those relationships for Chesney, not just making this team good next year, but also a year from now. So I'm thinking minimum UCLA can go get 7, but there are some top-tier talented guys over at James Madison. Maybe Wayne Knight goes to UCLA or elsewhere, but I think you have to get the 2 or 3 best O linemen from James Madison. The Bruins have to sign those guys. And then keep building for depth, because the Bruins can get a starting O-line. It's who can be on that 2 deep that can make this team legitimate. And Curt Cignetti proved, even with those 3-star guys, you can compete. The big discussion all season, or all postseason, I should say, is it a safety concern that James Madison and Tulane went and got beat down in the playoff? But UCLA is not going to take every single player. They're going to have more depth at those positions. They can take the guys who should have been at UCLA in the first place and stockpile them with talent and much better coaching. Much better coaching than what UCLA had in previous years. And when you got depth and you have good game planning, and now Chesney's seen what it takes to go play in Eugene with what I think is an easier UCLA schedule in 26 compared to other Big Ten schedules, Bruins getting the right players could build something special in 2026. Is it playoff worthy? Way too much expectation. But the Bruins go out and do something. Watch out. And I mean watch out. But also, were you watching out for the news today? I think what Pete Thamel of ESPN reported, there's a new offensive coordinator in Northwestern. And oh, by the way, saw Jerry Neuheisel himself repost this. His father's got a job. What? Got 2 different places with 2 former UCLA head coaches. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. There's nothing like the college football season, the college season in general, whether it's the tailgates, the packed stadiums, being right in the middle of it all, the energy of the bands, the moments you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that's the part that used to be frustrating. With long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkouts. No, not anymore. That's why Gametime takes the advantage and gives it back to the fans. The easiest way to unlock those amazing college football tickets and experience in just a few taps, well, it's with Gametime. You look at the upcoming games, you're like, wait a minute. Look how cheap those tickets are, and those prices aren't surprise fees. You can see where you're sitting with the views from My Seat, and they have zone deals where you pick a section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. Guess we're going to buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Cruising on here with Locked On UCLA, there have been a couple of new coaches finding new spots, but before that, right as I was recording this, UCLA has seemingly added another staffer. It would be Arizona State's DeAndre Cooper, who is supposed to be UCLA's director of college recruiting. He's going to be in charge of that. So you have Nathan Applebaum in player personnel. You have Derek Ray as the general manager. And Arizona State, is losing one of their key scouts. You're bringing in DeAndre Cooper to come be another West Coast guy, West Coast recruiter, to be a part of Bob Chesney, which is what I was just talking about in the previous segment. He's building a West Coast staff. So he's going to go take the guy who had a job at Cal to be a linebackers coach. He's going to go bring in a director of recruiting or director of college scouting from an ASU who's done a pretty solid job at finding some of the best talents, right? Scadaboo went from Sac State to Arizona State. They have some good track record of finding some talented guys for Kenny Dillingham, going from bad team to playoff team to pretty solid team here in 2025. So Chesney is now raiding those other staff, saying, all right, let's go get these guys and build a staff that can compete and identify and build relationships with the best talent on the western side of the United States. So that was first reported, I believe, by Arizona State's Chris Cartman. I reposted on the Locked On Bruins Twitter X account. Cartman is the 24/7 sports sundevilsource.com. So trust him. And then I think it was confirmed by Bruin Report as well. So you got ASU, their director of recruiting, and DeAndre Cooper coming to UCLA as that staff is starting to be built for Chesney, identifying what he wants, West Coast relationships that he just doesn't have right now. And I wonder if these are guys and younger guys whom he trusts to build just not only the West Coast relationships, but to be coaches for a long time under him, or if these are guys that are there just for temporary terms to build relationships and maybe they go find jobs elsewhere. But this industry is so crazy right now that coaches are year to year, staffers year to year, and you got to win or else you're out of the job and you're looking for the next job on the West Coast, or you're flying all the way across the country to get a new job, whether it's a promotion, a downgrade, whatever it is, we'll find out. But DeAndre Cooper is going to be involved in UCLA's recruiting and personnel, coming from Arizona State as the director of recruiting. All right. That was initially put out there. I've seen from Sun Devil Source and Chris Cartman. We'll see what else happens there. So now for UCLA and their former coaches. Well, earlier today, it was ESPN's Pete Thamel who reported that Chip Kelly, and I think also on 3 of Pinecos, putting out that Chip Kelly is going to Northwestern to be the offensive coordinator. So now Chip Kelly will be at his current 4th Big Ten school, head coach at Oregon, head coach at UCLA, offensive coordinator for Ohio State, and then was the offensive coordinator for Northwestern. Obviously, in between that was with the Raiders and got fired. It was so bad that Pete Carroll said, "No, that's not going to work." Didn't go well. And that's funny because I'm a Raiders fan. So I got to go from Chip Kelly to Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll. So that was rough. That's rough. So what Northwestern's try to do, be exciting, put up points, and that's what Chip Kelly didn't truly do in his last year at UCLA. Definitely did not do that with the Raiders in the NFL. So you wonder if Chip Kelly's going to start bouncing around and be this college-only guy. The one thing that truly sucks, though, for Chip Kelly going to Northwestern in 2026, UCLA is not on the schedule at home or on the road. Because if it was on the road, even with that new stadium being built, I think we as UCLA fans would go out there and boo. I would tell my tailgating buddies, hey, get out there and go boo them in person, even though you just went to Chicago and went to Northwestern and Evanston a year ago. Go back out there and boo Chip Kelly. I think we would have taken the opportunity to do that. Or if, say, Northwestern was coming to the Rose Bowl to return that road game from this season, that would have been fantastic. But that game that I think would sell out the Rose Bowl just to boo Chip Kelly, because the current state of UCLA football, which has slowly been in decline even before Chip Kelly in some cases, but where it's at right now because of the NIL, the fracture relationships in recruiting, it's all because of Chip. And we could have had that chance to boo him. All right. So I hope there is in some world, some way UCLA can play Northwestern. The only difference is with the bowl season changing and shifting, UCLA's Pac-12 ties to bowl games, I think, is now ending after this season. There's not a world where I think they play Northwestern, barring something absolutely crazy, in the 2026 season, in the postseason or in the regular season. So the Bruins don't have Northwestern scheduled. We don't get to boo Chip Kelly, who's now becoming an offensive coordinating mercenary, maybe for a national championship winning Ohio State or for one of the worst teams in the NFL. I don't really know where that career trajectory falls. For him, it falls with Northwestern, who is a place that likes to books and ball. And it'd be funny if he does or does not succeed. We'll see what happens. The other guy that gets a job, Rick Neuheisel. Not the Neuheisel we thought would be getting a job announcement, Jerry Neuheisel, who reposted. I'm not sure if he has any role with this, but it's Rick who has been on television, was obviously making the waves for cheering on his son in studio, being interviewed mid-game by the broadcast about how he was doing during the Penn State game when Jerry took over the play calling duties, and the Bruins masterfully upset Penn State, led to a James Franklin firing, and got a 3-game winning streak with an offense that looked worse before him calling plays and at least showed some substance by the time he took over. There was some rumors of Rick going to Washington State, possibly would have led to Jerry Neuheisel being the offensive coordinator in Wazoo. Instead, it's Rick Neuheisel, who is the head coach of the Dallas Renegades of the UFL. Last time he was a head coach was back in 2019 of the Arizona Hotshots, the AAF. The AAF. So he went from what was a short-lived football league, has been on television, and then I think the idea is what? We'll see. He probably wants to get back into coaching. Will Jerry be on that staff? I haven't seen anything. This is a league that starts in what, a few months, in late March 2026. The combination between the XFL and the USFL, now the UFL. So I wonder if this job is one to get his feet wet back into coaching, and two, maybe give Jerry those reps to call plays at the UFL, but that is not confirmed. That's a connection that makes a lot of sense, but it is not confirmed at this moment. And if you're Jerry, would you really want to follow your father and then go call games for a league that could collapse at any time? We've seen spring football leagues do that, although the UFL has done pretty well these last 2 seasons. Looks like it might do just fine in year number 3. We'll find out. Or does he go somewhere in college, get those reps, build more relationships, and that begins to get him a career with calling plays? So we'll see what happens, but it's Rick Neuheisel, the head coach of the Dallas Renegades, 7 years in between head coaching gigs, albeit in the spring for football. Last time Rick Neuheisel coached a football team was before COVID. Yeah, crazy. Absolutely crazy. So that's the staff update with DeAndre Cooper. You've got Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, who we wish we could to boo. We don't, because that's where UCLA's current state of football is because of him leaving in winter of just, a year and a half ago. And then you got Rick Neuheisel getting to do the gig. What a crazy day. Crazy day. Well, UCLA, the women's basketball team, has one more game prior to the end of the calendar year in 2025. And what we hope to be a banner year in 2026, they still got a Big Ten team to beat. And it was a scrappy Penn State team last year that gave the Bruins fits in the Pyramid in Long Beach State. Let's tell you what this game's going to look like when the Bruins head to State College for a New Year's matinee affair in Penn State. Next on Locked On UCLA. Fridays already feel different during the basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. This happens from 6 to 7:30 Eastern on FanDuel. It's appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. There's something special between boosts, bonuses, surprise, and it's easy to check out those weekly specials right before tip-off, and you can make a move right before the window closes. It's right before the weekend happens, right before those games, and adds those extra energy for those Friday night basketball games so you don't even overthink it. Before tip-off, check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, cruising on, it's time to preview UCLA women's hoops as they take on Penn State, the last true sporting event for the Bruins in the 2025 calendar year. Now, what we hope could be a banner year in the spring will be something that Corey Close and the team have to build and grow, all right? We've seen South Carolina go and be a part of this college basketball carousel. Dawn Staley having a 7-foot international player who I think does have some, 7-foot, 6'7", international player with some experience, an 18-year-old who's going to join them midseason. To my knowledge, I don't think any player, man or woman, is going to join Mick Cronin's team or Corey Close's team right in between the quarter break. A little tougher to do that for UCLA with a midseason ad. So I don't see that happening, but something to take note. Dawn Staley is getting a big-time post player who might get some immediate minutes if she's eligible and able to get to classes right when classes start in early to mid-January for South Carolina. But the Bruins, they're focused on themselves. The preseason #1 team in the Big Ten, current #4 in the country. You've got Corey Close and company who are on a little lengthy extended trip in the East Coast, beating a ranked Ohio State team. But this is a Penn State team that last year gave the Bruins some fits. Earlier in this calendar year, we had the wildfires going on in the greater Los Angeles area, created a lot of strife, a lot of hardship, and the Bruins, they had to move, the women did, some of their games. They had one game postponed against Fort Northwestern, and then UCLA moved their home game from Poly over to the Walter Pyramid on the campus of Long Beach State, which is the site of where Corey Close broke the all-time record for wins as UCLA women's head basketball coach. So they got to go play at the Walter Pyramid. You could tell it was a unique venue. It was a weird time. It was also what on NBC Peacock, just like this game is going to be, in an early morning game against Penn State on New Year's Eve. And Penn State led the Bruins by a couple of points after a quarter. And the Bruins just couldn't put the pesky Nittany Lions away. Instead, UCLA, they won that game by 16, but I thought they would have won that game by 20, 25, 30. Yet UCLA struggled. Why was there any sort of matchup in this game? Why was this a unique one? It's because Penn State has one of the more dominant players in the country in the paint, Gracie Merkel. Now, Penn State is not a dominant team. They're barely above 500. This is a game UCLA should win. But Gracie Merkel is a good test for Lauren Betts once again here in 2025 to go against a big-time post player that South Carolina has been building up against. That UConn's going to try and throw Sarah Strong at her in their posts. That other teams like UConn, Sarah Williams, or other post players like Iowa State's Audie Crooks are going to be prepared and ready for any Lauren Betts-like matchup. So Gracie Merkel is a player who averages 20 points per game for Penn State, averages 8.5 rebounds per game, has 17 blocks, 3 steals, a couple of assists, and is one of the main reasons that Penn State is competitive. Her shooting percentage is 73.9%. Close to 74% is her field goal percentage. So Gracie Merkel, when she gets the basketball, cannot be stopped. So she is a tough cookie to deal with. Earlier this year, though, when UCLA played her, she had 5 points and only took, 3 shots in 19 minutes? So the Bruins were really good at denying the basketball, making sure she had to work hard to get it, and just didn't get enough attempts to get close to the bucket and take shots. But she's good at efficiency and knowing when she's going to get the bucket. She's one of the best shooting percentages in the country. She's #1, is Gracie Merkel. As a, 6'6" center for Penn State, redshirt junior out of Kentucky, started her career at Bellarmine, was the conference's freshman player of the year, missed, I think, due to injury, transferred to Penn State, and has been pretty solid for Penn State's team in the post last couple of years. She averages basically a 70% shooting percentage from the floor. So it'd be nice to see if Lauren Betts can go dominate, have a couple of blocks. There have been maybe some national wonderings. Hey, can she compete with some of the best players in the post across the country as she's going to transition into the WNBA after this season? I think Lauren Betts absolutely will be just fine. But remember, she's wearing a left shoulder sleeve. She's been a bit banged up, had to miss a game. So as the Bruins go through Big Ten play, as teams start to throw waves and waves of solid post players, I want to see how Lauren Betts can handle those types of matchups. Now, another player to look out for, Penn State, Kiyomi McMillan, an 18-point-per-game scorer, isn't exactly a three-point shooter, but she can dish it out. She also turns over the rock quite a bit. She has 60 turnovers to 60 assists, while also having 27 steals. Leads her team in assists, leads her team in turnovers, leads her team in assists, and is second on the team in points. Kiyomi McMillan. Got to look out for her as one of those players who, could make something happen against UCLA in this game. This is not a player who had time against UCLA in this game earlier this year. It was only Gracie Merkel and Mariah Murray as 2 players who are in the starting lineup that got some minutes against UCLA earlier this year. So McMillan is a unique matchup who could easily put UCLA's turnover numbers through the roof, but she could also account for Penn State turning it over 15 times, half those times by herself. So if the Bruins want to pressure her, not let her go off, then UCLA will be better off for it. And number 3, Penn State, their three-point shooter. Well, if you look percentage-wise, you'll see number 2 shooter in the country from 3 is Gabriela Jaquez, which means she leads the conference in attempts. If she's number 2 nationally, she leads the country in three-point shooting field goal percentage. Mariah Murray, in terms of three-point shots per game, she shoots at 42%, has made almost 40 in a little under 15 games. 13 games played, she's made 38 threes. And in terms of Big Ten three-point shots per game made, she's amongst the league's leaders in three-point shots per game made. She shoots it pretty well from the floor, 43%. Her game is knocking it down from 3 and scoring the basketball. So she is one of 4 Penn State players who score double figures or more. Every other Penn State player is about a 5-point per game player, shooter, scorer, whatever. It's really, can you avoid turning it over too much? Will Merkel get her shots? Can you force McMillan to turnovers? And then will Murray get her three-point looks? Very simple game plan. Other teams can score inside, outside. It's not the dynamic play you're going to face of UConn or the other dominance of an Audi Crooks of Iowa State or just the coaching and game planning of Don Staley. But Penn State represents a slow buildup, a ramping up in competition now that they're in the thick of things in Big Ten play. I want to see how Lauren Betts fares once again against Merkel and who's going to win the battle of better Big Ten three-point shooters between Neepkins and Jaquez versus Mariah Murray in a shooting competition. I expect the Bruins to hopefully win this one by 15 to 20 in a true road game. They struggled with Ohio State, struggled with Penn State earlier this year. We'll see what it looks like in a true road matchup in what is supposed to be a matinee affair at Penn State before they fly back home and enjoy New Year's Day. We'll talk more men's basketball as they prepare for Big Ten opener, if you will, against traditional Big Ten teams, and any more portal opportunities, more coaching staff updates here on Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.